You're locked in to Independent Grind on Dash Radio. Tune in Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern for the latest hip-hop news, music, and interviews. Independent Grind only on Dash Radio, baby. Tech 9!
Okay, we got Kai Straw on the line. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Pretty good. Mackenzie, how are you?
I'm doing great. Really happy to be here.
So what are you up to now? Because I know you just dropped your Project Gun. Are you like kind of taking a breather now? What's the past, like, I guess a week and a half or so been like for you?
I'm sort of perpetually working on music. It's almost like a compulsion. So I wake up and just continue to make music. So I guess I'm working on the next album, I guess. These songs, or maybe they'll be thrown away. But yeah, definitely always creating. But it's exciting to put out a project. It's also sort of nerve wracking, and you think you're going to go online and everybody's going to say it's trash. So it's like there's this mixture of emotions happening for sure.
Now that you're sort of like done, do you have another project in mind, or are you just kind of like, I guess, is there a difference in your creative process when are you writing specifically for an album, or are you just kind of making it to make it? Is there a difference there?
No, there's no difference. I sit down and I try to make something that's honest and that will hopefully be impactful to who'll hear it, and then I make enough of them to go on an album, sort of. And then because they're made in the same time frame, normally I'm in a frame of mind to where they'll all have sort of a similar theme, just because that's sort of how life is. It ebbs and flows, and you tend to create or theme for each period of time. So it's not directly for some project or something. It's because it never is. It's mostly for, I don't know, the love of doing it and me sort of expressing myself.
You see, that's super interesting, at least to me, because I feel like a lot of artists, and this approach works just as well, write to a concept and then create an album around that. And the way that you kind of let it kind of organically get that, thematic, it becomes its own theme and concept and project as it's created.
I think if you're creating honestly, then it's heading toward a specific direction because it's coming from the same person. It's going to have a theme because usually, people have they're in a, like I said, they're in a specific frame of mind during like an 8-month period, say. And it will become something organically. I think it would be too confining if I sat down and thought like, oh, I want this to be about a certain character or a certain subject matter. That's not, at least right now, that's not super interesting to me.
I really like that term, frame of mind. What sort of frame of mind were you in with Gun? Was there a specific something you were wrestling with?
Yeah, for sure. I was, so I'm sort of a workaholic. I work like 14 hours a day on various things. Over the past few years, I had time to like commit to a serious relationship. And during Gun, I did. So in Gun, you see a song like Rolls, which is about wanting to be successful. But the hook is me talking to a woman about it. It's saying, one day we'll be made of money, and I'm gonna, we're gonna be able to move to LA. I'm gonna have money to get you whatever you want, or in 11 homes. At the very end, it's me. The image in my mind was me laying in bed with someone that I love and talking to them about our dreams. So it was my attempt to unite two things that I think most people feel are separate, like to be hugely ambitious and be hugely in love with somebody. And so that's reflected in the album.
Well, that's something I actually wanted to ask you about, because that's like a theme in all your music. I think, I heard it first in American Cotton, where it's sort of that similar theme where you're talking about like your family versus your work ethic. Is that, I guess, how, and then again, like you mentioned, Rolls, that's another one. Like, I like the music, like where your stuff is motivational, you're focused on your dreams, but how do you sort of,
absolutely.
How do you, like, I guess not look too far ahead? Because I feel like sometimes we want, like what I've noticed or with me is like, I see these things I want and I get frustrated that I can't have them, as opposed to just focusing on the day to day, or, taking it step by step. And then, so I guess how, as an artist, do you balance that, like keeping that motivation, keeping those dreams, but also like, not getting discouraged and trying to, because it is a slow process being an artist, like, building.
Oh, absolutely. It takes me like 2 years to make an album.
Is there a balance there? Or I guess, how do you balance that?
So say the question one more time.
It was just sort of like, how do you balance like sort of having those dreams and those long-term goals, but also like the patience that it takes to be an artist?
Well, I think the patience comes with the love for the craft. So like if I hated making music, then it would suck grinding for years, for like 10 years, without a huge amount of success. That'd be terrible unless, you know, I loved making every song, unless I loved writing every verse, you know, and fortunately I do. Like I wake up in the morning, I make all my music in the morning, and when I'm writing or recording, I love the process. It's like each song's like a journey to me. So it's just like inherently rewarding on a day-to-day basis that I like doing it regardless of the success it may or may not bring. And I'm excited that some of my music has reached more people than it has when I was younger.
You know, aside from the big goals, like having like a roles, or, you know, like sort of, I guess, quote unquote, like, you know, making it or whatever, do you set up short-term goals, or do you kind of like, you seem like you're very sort of free and abstract and let things flow. Do you try to set up short-term goals, or?
I mean, beyond the creative process, you know, you try, but music, it's so objective, subjective, to where it's hard to plan like, oh, I'm going to release this album, going to crush it, everyone's going to love it, and then I'm going to go on tour, and you know what I mean? That's like, it's a hard thing to plot out in that way. I mean, you could say like, oh, we're going to do this album, then we're going to do these music videos, and then based on that success, this is potentially going to happen. But it's sort of a hard arena to have firm long-term plans, if that makes sense. And fortunately, I have. Sorry, go. Mackenzie, right? Is that your name, Mackenzie?
Yeah, Mackenzie, and you can totally finish.
Go for it, yeah.
Go ahead. But,
no, go. Add to it.
Okay. No, for me, like, I know personally, even though I'm artisting right now, a huge part of my background.
Did you say you're artisting?
Yeah. Yes.
Artisting. I've never heard that. Okay, go. So.
A huge part of my background and a lot of what I currently do is, you know, more on the executive corporate business side of our industry. And so it's really interesting to hear the perspective of an artist who, you know, doesn't. It's easy to try and manufacture a plan when it comes to releasing music, when it comes to, like you said, okay, I'm going to release this album, I'm going to crush it, we're going to go on tour. You know, there's a largely like, go ahead. Are you going
to answer that?
Oh, no, it's fine. It's like a door. The office door.
Go ahead.
Okay. I thought someone was ringing, you can go grab it. No, I mean, throughout my, I guess, music career, I've been making music for a very long time in different genres and worked with a lot of different people. And in the Bay Area in particular, I've made, you know, I started out producing hip hop music for local acts. And I've heard so many people's plans, you know, I've heard so many people say next year we're going to be here, or we're going to be working with whomever. And I've seen so many plans, you know, fall to the wayside or not come to fruition. Because in the end, all that thought, in my perspective, should be going toward making really, really good music. And then if the music does well, then you will kind of earn the right to make those plans.
No, I think that's a really that totally makes sense. And honestly, like, I think a lot of artists, especially ones who end up kind of caught up in the corporate juggernaut of the really heavy industry side of it, would like to follow that, you know, methodology a little bit more, and or maybe not all of them, but I feel like a lot of artists I know, especially those who maybe don't get to approach their career art first per se, definitely would prefer to do so. And so it's really beautiful to me that is the approach you're taking, and that your focus is so centric on the actual creation of really quality, beautiful art, and then allowing the rest to come as a result of that, and not be, you know, not allowing it to become like that.
Yeah, that's worked for me. It's worked for me insofar as I've been most successful by just focusing on making excellent music. And back when I was trying to more so, you know, they say you want to make your, you know, be an artist almost as a storefront or something. And you can kind of focus too much on being a business and not enough on what your actual product is, which is creating great music. And I sort of bailed on being active on, say, social media and these things. Just I hate that stuff anyway. But and I just started focusing on making great music, and then I released the album Too Thick, and then one of my songs, Hurricane, went on. I think it went number 2 on the global viral chart, which was very fun for me, and number 1 in the UK. And so I started getting sort of like pats on the back from the universe when I just started caring more so exclusively about what I was making and not about, I don't know, that extra layer of like trying to scheme too much. And like, you can't scheme your way into being successful in music, I don't believe. I think you have to be, you have to make a very good music that affects people emotionally, first and foremost.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it was Hurricane for you, but was there sort of a moment that where you learned that, or where you said, like, what was that moment where you learned that, okay, I'm just going to try to take a step back and then focus only on the music?
Well, there's a few people in my life that I talk to and who are sort of mentors or confidants, and it was just through a series of conversations where I may have been talking about, because I've always been frustrated with the social media public element of being an artist. Like, even this interview is somewhat uncomfortable for me to do. It's just not naturally, I'm just not inclined to do that. I'm like, I just want to go make music, Mm-hmm. So I think I was talking to somebody about that frustration, and they pretty much said, just focus on, just like, look at what you love to do in sort of your musical journey, and just focus on that. Focus on what you are most inclined to be, to jump into fully and be passionate
mm-hmm.
within. So it's just, sorry, go.
Oh, I was going to say, well, I'm glad you did the interview. Thanks for taking it.
And it'd be stupid not to. And I know, like, I'm happy that I'm doing the interview for sure. And I totally appreciate the format. And it's just, I'm like fairly private, and
mm-hmm.
and my music feels so outside of me. Like, once I make it, it's almost as if I've discovered it. I'm like, why are you talking to me about it? I don't know where it came from, almost.
Do you, I guess, so is there a song on the new album On Gun where you, like, you made it and you like, okay, it's going to be out, that you're particularly like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm putting this out?
You mean,
like, in terms of like I was just like, you said you're a very private person, but your music is like,
the whole album. I feel like, like the next day I feel sort of terrible for the next day after I release anything. I just feel sort of horrible about myself, because the part of the process that I enjoy the most, as far as like one's music career, is the creative aspect of it. Like, I love making the music, and I love starting with nothing, and then at the end you have something that's hopefully emotionally resonant, and you're like, oh my gosh, like I don't know, and there's something so satisfying about that process, period. And then I do 10 of them, and then now it's, now I must release it, I suppose. And then I put it out there, and I, it's almost embarrassing, which is, I guess, sort of a funny thought, but that's how I feel. Sometimes I go like flush red, and I'm like, oh my gosh, well, there you go. I hope people enjoy it.
No, I think that's really I think that's a really honest and really, in a lot of ways, relatable, at least for me, answer to that, because like, it's kind of like that feeling you get after you have like a deep conversation with someone where you talk about like a lot of feelings, and then you walk away and you feel like the grimiest person that's ever lived.
Yeah, maybe.
You're just like,
you feel a little
sucks.
embarrassed.
Yeah,
you're like,
exactly.
Oh man, now they know I'm an actual human.
Exactly.
I want to talk a little bit about James the Bear. He's someone you've worked with extensively.
Yeah, for sure.
Who, I think it's like often, I love just like in hip hop especially. There's always like what I love is like the one producer, one artist.
Oh, absolutely,
like
for sure.
So tell me a little bit about James, like how you got linked up with him, what your guys' relationship is, what your process is.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. And one thing that I think, real quick before I get into that, one thing that I like about me and James the Bear's relationship, it's sort of that hip hop dynamic where you have one producer and a vocalist, but we're not making exclusively hip hop. And I think that's because both of us were raised on multiple genres. So we're kind of cherry picking aspects of, each genre and putting it into our music. But as far as how we met and things, so I've been making music for a while, and I was making all this real emotional. It was almost like I was searching my soul for like the darkest nooks and crannies and bringing it up, hoping that there will be something interesting that people will relate with. And it got me a collection of people who really appreciated that sort of music. And James the Bear was one of them. And that was probably, I want to say like 3.5, 4 years ago now, which is kind of crazy. But he wrote me, and he's on Facebook, and he said, "Hey man, I love your music, and I've been grinding away on my music, and I feel like, nobody's listening to it. And you sort of in a bummed out place. And I listen to everybody's music if they send it to me." So I went to his SoundCloud, and I just thought it was excellent. I was like, "Oh, dude, this dude's incredibly talented." So I had asked him if he wanted to remix one of my songs, and he remixed a song called "We'll Be All Right," and he did an excellent job. And then I was like, "Hey, man, do you want to just do an album?" Because I was working full-time. I worked full-time for a nightclub company in San Francisco. So the amount of time I could devote every morning to the production of my music was getting smaller. And to bring someone on board for the creative process just made sense for me. And he kind of appeared at just the right time. So we started working on Toothpick together, and we just he doesn't even live in San Francisco. He lives in Colorado. So we exchange, a huge number of emails and text messages, and just to construct these songs, we send them back and forth to each other. I would say it takes us like a month to finish a song, and we've been doing that and we still do that. I will likely talk to him today about songs for the next album. So that's where that relationship came from, if that answers your question.
Yeah. Have you guys met in person yet?
No, we have not.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Wow,
that's so
incredible.
crazy.
All right, this is kind of weird. I don't like it, but we also have communicated exclusively over text and emails over the past 3.5 years. We haven't even talked on the phone.
Wow.
That's incredible. Like our in-house producer Seven is someone who I don't even like going in the studio to record something on one of his beats unless we're both there and interacting face to face. So that takes a incredible artistic synergy though. You have to be really on the same wavelength in a beautiful way.
Oh, thank you very much. That's one reason why I haven't pursued sort of more contact, more like normal contact, is because I feel like right now our creative beasts are having an excellent relationship. I'm like, why would I want to come and bring me into that? Or you know?
Yeah.
There's some other. Go for it.
I was just gonna say it's like on Tinder when you're talking to someone and then you meet in real life and it's totally different.
Did you just compare
never
this
know.
artistic relationship to
Not the
Tinder
artistic
matches?
relationship, but it's similar. That's the only way I can relate to it.
No, it's somewhat similar. And I have these, I have the thought that wouldn't it be great if we became astronomically successful with our music, if the first time we met was sort of to celebrate that success. It's just I've also, and this is also sort of strange. That can be sort of strange, but I've saved every single text message we've ever exchanged. I've never deleted the conversation in my phone. So if we were to become astronomically successful, you could, in theory, print out all of these text messages and sort of read a story of two artists grinding and then finally reaching the success they were aiming for, which I just think would be interesting.
Wow. Yeah, that would be amazing. So how does that work? Does he send you a full beat? Does he what's the back and forth there? How does a song get created?
It's definitely, it's definitely a combination of things. Sometimes it's a beat, or sometimes I'll send him some rudimentary blueprint of a song. I'll record the entire song over something. Sometimes as minimal as a clap. I don't know if you're familiar with the song The Recipe that I made. That went number one on Hype Machine, which was fairly exciting. But that song was initially written and recorded over a clap. It was just my clap. And the song came to me when I was on the bus. So I came home and recorded it over a clap, and I sent it to him. And then he did his thing, and then he sent it back, and then, I'll write like a page of notes and send that back. And then we sort of sharpen the song back and forth like that until it's finished. But sometimes, it begins with a clap, or sometimes it begins with just a cappella, or sometimes it begins with just like Baby Pick Up Your Gun was a string section that I wrote, and then I sent it to James the Bear, who then did the percussion. So there's a fair amount of back and forth. I mean, we send the songs back and forth probably 15 times at least, sort of sharpening each other's contributions.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned, you obviously did Toothpick and now Gun. I guess when you're creating with, the same person, did you guys take any steps to make sure that the album, because you obviously don't want it to sound the exact same. There are elements and, themes and stuff, especially in your music, which is like part of the reason I feel like is so personal, because you have these themes that really feel like they're you, but at the same time, you want things to feel different. How did you, was that a conscious thing you guys talked about? Did you want that? Did you try to achieve something different?
No, I think if you approach your music with organic inspiration, it'll be bursting from you authentically in this moment, and you're different in this moment than you were 2 years ago when you made your last album. Mm-hmm. So if you approach your music with the same mindset, it will have to come out differently, because you're in a different space. And I think you'll get in trouble if you try to come at it logically, like, all right, dude, let's do the opposite, or all right, let's try to emulate that success in some way. So yeah, I think I've approached creativity the same way since I was a kid, which is just, you're searching somewhere within yourself. It's a very authentic, organic process that doesn't take a huge amount of thought, and you're not thinking about what you made in the past or what you'll make in the future, really. Mm-hmm. And if that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking on that, sort of on a similar lane, being the same but also being different, I like that your music has a lot of juxtaposition in it. You have these sort of colorful beats, but there's also splash, and I know Mackenzie will appreciate this, but there's splashes of darkness in it. I'm thinking of Bones, even the title Gun, or Chevy Corvette, the story you tell is very dark and cynical. Where does that juxtaposition come from?
I'm always having to pull back from some dark inspiration for sure. And I think if I'm successful, you'll see little shadows of it, right? In the name Gun, or in sort of this theme throughout that album that's sort of selfish and greedy. There's a dark shadow behind a lot of those songs, but I think it's soft enough that someone won't see it unless they sort of start thinking about the music anymore. And if you would look at my lyrics in that album, then you would see even more of that. And if you go into my past, into my old albums, you could see music that was completely run by that darkness. And then as I grew older, I kind of just became a happy person. I was very depressed when I was younger. And then as I got older, I made the conscious decision in my own life to try to find the joy in everything. And this music has come out of that, but because I have a tendency to, it's I know that I will always have a pull toward being cynical or having depressive thoughts. And because I'm winning that battle, my music is mostly now joyful, but because it's a part of me, you hear that tinged within it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it makes sense. And I know Mackenzie is the same way.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that, because something that's really important to me, and obviously my kind of artistic background is in collaborating with some of my label mates here on such tracks with artists by the name of Prozac, for example, or Tech Nine, on stuff like Fear, Demons, King of Darkness. So I really feel for having the dark undertones that kind of trend through your music, and that was something that's really important to keeping the integrity of who you are. I think that it's
for sure.
it's a certain depth that's like really, really incredible and really, perceivable, especially if you can relate to that as a person in your music. And so I really love that. I really love that thematic element throughout your career. But sorry, this is where I start to try and not be like a creepy fan.
No, thank you. Well, I think when I hear music that does not have just a hint of that somewhere, it doesn't feel authentic, because I feel like life, period, everybody struggles throughout their life. And I feel like at any point you have like a kernel of sadness. Everybody has something, to varying degrees, varying sizes, but I think everybody has some piece of them that is sad at any given moment if they were to stop and, dwell on it. So I think that's why when you have an artist who's trying music comes from the soul. So it's going to get pieces of that sadness that's within all of us if it's authentic music. So when I hear a song that's just totally sort of like bubblegum joyful, I'm very skeptical of it. And I start to feel like it was conjured by 12 people in a meeting sort of thing.
Awesome. You seem, and like you just mentioned, when you listen to music, you seem like you really do love music. So I'm just curious, like, what are you listening? And your music's so diverse. Like, I'm curious what you listen to. Oh, sure. Who are some like your favorite artists?
Sure. Well, when I work on an album, I listen to very, very little music. I think it's because so much of my writing is done while I'm walking around, or in periods of time where some people will fill up with music, that I don't listen to much. But let's say before this album, during like the 2 weeks between Toothpick and Gun or something, I'm inspired a lot by old soul music. I like to say that Toothpick was me failing to sound like James Brown on some of those songs. I like that. My mom was a huge fan of Otis Redding. I'm pacing my apartment right now, by the way. I think I may sound out of breath here and there. That's why. But but yeah, my mom was a big fan of Otis Redding. My dad would play a lot of Marvin Gaye. There's a video of me when I'm like 6 years old singing along to Marvin Gaye with my dad on our way to like Tahoe or something like that. Mm-hmm. So that plays like a huge role in like, I don't know, where I come from with music. Yeah. I was also, this is kind of like an aside, but I was, in the beginning of my life, my parents were new Christians when I was born. So we weren't allowed to listen to anything but Christian music. And that lasted until I was like, probably like 12 or 13. So I didn't start discovering music a whole lot until I was older. And I think I could appreciate it more, having like to hear for the first time, just like mainstream music when you're nearly an adult, you kind of experience it differently rather than just growing up around it. I think you could take it for granted. And then, I remember the first time I heard, say, Eminem or something, right? Like it was like not allowed to listen to that. We're going to get grounded if we listen to that type of thing. Yeah. But because it was so brand new to me, it was super impactful. I was like, oh my goodness, look how much you could express, right, in music. When before, as a boy, beyond soul music, it was all this Christian music, and it was what's the line? There's a line that sticks in my head. All right, I'm about to tell you a line from a Christian rock song, so I'm trying to remember it. It's people say I'm strange. Does that make me a stranger? My best friend was born in a manger. It was like that, Jesus, and it was that type of thing that I grew up with. So it really made me appreciate all the nuances of popular music, and there's such a huge like rainbow of genres one can tap at any moment to access whatever emotion you're hoping to access. So I think that may be why my albums are so diversified, because I wasn't raised on, after Christian music. I went and kind of discovered music on my own, and I found pieces of all of it that I very much enjoyed.
Well, that's awesome. And you can definitely hear in the music. Like, I think you mentioned soul music, and I love soul because like it sounds so beautiful, but at the same time there is that like darkness and pain in it. And so it is
absolutely.
That cool, like, that cool
one
balance.
Of my favorite songs. Yeah. Maybe my favorite song of all time is Sam Cooke, A Change Gonna Come.
I was literally just about to mention that one.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal song. I listen to that frequently. I think soul music, I don't know, it pricks my soul in a way. It's almost as if it's speaking a language that I didn't know I could understand, you know? Like you play and it's just like, it's pressing some buttons within me that, you know, weren't being pressed via, you know, normal life experiences. It's something that's coming directly from this music in a super authentic, emotional way.
Definitely.
So yeah, I very much appreciate that sort of music.
Awesome, man. Well, yeah, I don't want to keep you too long. So absolutely, thanks for joining us. And I was just, you know, do you have anything else on the pipeline? I know you're always working. Do you have shows or anything coming up? Anything you want to direct people to?
Let's see. Well, you should go get my album on KaiStra.com. It's available. Other than that, I'm always working on music, and we're not doing any shows yet. We're just trying to, you know, affect as many people as possible by making excellent music until the attention necessitates us bringing it around the world, I suppose.
This is the genius, Chris Calico. Cali, baby. Letting you know you're tuned into Tech Nine's Independent Grind on Dash Radio.